Welcome back to First Pages YA Edition. I'm super excited to pick the novel for today. First, Happy New Year, and we are so glad to see you in 2021. I hope yours is off to a good start, and the best start is when you start with a book. So I am recommending a new novel that just came out recently. And what led me to this one is, as you know, I really like the fantasy genre. But over the holidays, even though I'm not really in the age range for Twilight, I did go ahead and rewatch the entire series. Something that I have found myself doing during this pandemic is going back and watching movies or TV shows that I've already seen. Like, you already know what's going to happen, so that sense of anxiety or nervousness is not there. And so I've been doing that, like the whole Fast and Furious series, Gone in 60 Seconds, Robin Hood, and then the Twilight series. And so that made me think about the new novel that Stephanie Meyer was coming out with, which is Midnight Sun. And so this is the story of Twilight, of Edward and Bella, from Edward's point of view. Which I think we've all been kind of waiting for. It was nice to have the entire series originally from Bella's point of view, but there's just nothing like getting in a vampire's mind. And so that's what Stephanie Meyer is going to do for us. She's going to take us into Edward's mind and let us see his perspective. So let's get started with Midnight Sun. Chapter 1, First Sight. This was the time of day when I most wished I were able to sleep. High school. Or was purgatory the right word? If there were any way to atone for my sins, this ought to count toward the tally in some measure. The tedium was not something I grew used to. Every day seemed more impossibly monotonous than the last. Perhaps this could even be considered my form of sleep, if sleep was defined as the inert state between active periods. I stared at the cracks running through the plaster in the far corner of the cafeteria, imagining patterns into them that were not there. It was one way to tune out the voices that babbled like the gush of a river inside my head. Several hundred of these voices I ignored out of boredom. When it came to the human mind, I'd heard it all before, and then some. Today, all thoughts were consumed with the trivial drama of a new addition to the small student body. It took so little to work them up. I'd seen the new face repeated in thought after thought from every angle. Just an ordinary human girl. The excitement over her arrival was tiresomely predictable. It was the same reaction as one would get from flashing a shiny object at a group of toddlers. I tried harder to tune them out. Only 4 of the voices did I block out of courtesy rather than distaste. My family, my 2 brothers, and my 2 sisters, who were so used to the lack of privacy in my presence that they rarely worried about it. I gave them what I could. I tried not to listen if I could help it. Try as I may, still, I knew. Rosalie was thinking, as usual, about herself. Her mind was a stagnant pool with few surprises. She caught sight of her profile in the reflection off someone's glasses, and she was mulling over her own perfection. She didn't compare herself to the humans here. That juxtaposition would have been laughable, absurd. She thought of others like us, none of them her equal. Emmett's usually carefree expression was crumpled with frustration. Even now, he ran one enormous hand through his ebony curls, twisting the hair into his fist, still fuming over the wrestling match he'd lost to Jasper during the night. And Jasper was suffering. I suppressed a sigh. Edward. Alice called my name in her head and had my attention at once. It was just the same as having my name called aloud. My head didn't turn now. Alice and I were good at these private conversations. It was rare that anyone caught us. How is he holding up? She asked me. I frowned. Just a small change in the set of my mouth. Nothing that would tip the others off. I could easily be frowning out of boredom. Jasper had been still for too long. He wasn't performing human tics the way we all must. Constantly in motion so as not to stand out, like Emmett pulling his hair, Rosalie crossing her legs first one way, then the next, Alice tapping her toes against the linoleum, or me, moving my head to stare at different patterns in the wall. Jasper looked paralyzed, his lean form ramrod straight, even his honey hair seeming not to react to the air wafting from the vents. She relaxed. Let me know if it gets too bad. Thanks for doing this. I was glad I couldn't answer her aloud. What would I say? My pleasure? It was hardly that. I didn't enjoy tuning into Jasper's struggles. It had been 2 weeks since our last hunting trip. That was not an immensely difficult time span for the rest of us. A little uncomfortable occasionally. But humans rarely walk too close. Their instincts told them what their conscious minds would never understand. We were a danger that must be avoided. Jasper was very dangerous right now. At that moment, a small girl paused at the end of the closest table to ours, stopping to talk to a friend. She tossed her short, sandy hair, combing her fingers through it. The heaters blew her scent in our direction. This was all quite normal, usually easy to ignore. It was harder just now, with the reaction stronger, doubled, as I monitored Jasper. Jasper was letting his imagination get away from him. He was picturing himself getting up from his seat next to Alice and going to stand beside the little girl, thinking of leaning down and in as if he were going to whisper in her ear. I kicked his chair. He met my gaze, his black eyes resentful for a second, and then looked down. I could hear shame and rebellion war in his head. Sorry, Jasper muttered. I shrugged. You weren't going to do anything, Alice murmured to him, soothing his mortification. I could see that. I fought back the frown that would give her lie away. We had to stick together, Alice and I. It helps a little if you think of them as people, Alice suggested, her high musical voice racing too fast for human ears to understand, if any had been close enough to hear. Her name is Whitney. She has a baby sister she adores. Her mother invited Esme to the garden party. Do you remember? I know who she is, Jasper whispered. He would have to hunt tonight. Alice sighed and stood, taking her tray of food, her prop as it were, with her and leaving him alone. Reflex reaction. Edward. I turned to the sound of my name being called, though it wasn't being called, just thought. My eyes locked for half a second with a pair of large chocolate brown human eyes set in a pale, heart-shaped face. I knew the face, though I'd never seen it myself before this moment. It had been foremost in every human head today. The new student, Isabella Swan, daughter of the town's chief of police, brought to live here by some new custody situation. Bella. She'd corrected everyone who used her full name. I looked away, bored. It took me a second to realize that she had not been the one to think my name. Of course she's already crushing on the Cullens, I heard the first thought continue. Now I recognized the voice. Jessica Stanley. It had been a while since she bothered me with her internal chatter. So, is the new one afraid of us yet? Emma asked, still waiting for my response to his earlier question. I shrugged. He wasn't interested enough to press for more information. Emmett, Rosalie, and Jasper were pretending to be seniors. They left for their classes. I was playing a younger role than they. I headed off for my junior level biology lesson, preparing my mind for the tedium. Because I'd been thinking about the new girl, when Angela Weber escorted her through the door, her name intruded on my attention. Bella seems just as shy as me. I'll bet today is really hard for her. I wish I could say something, but it would probably just sound stupid. Yes, Mike Newton thought, turning in his seat to watch the girls enter. Still, from the place where Bella Swan stood, nothing. The empty space where her thoughts should be vexed and unnerved me. What if it all went away? What if this was just the first symptom of some kind of mental decline? I'd often wished I could escape the cacophony, that I could be normal, as far as that was possible for me. But now I felt panicked at the thought. Who would I be without what I could do? I'd never heard of such a thing. I would see if Carlisle had. The girl walked down the aisle beside me, headed to the teacher's desk. Her girl. The seat next to me was the only one available. Automatically, I cleared what would be her side of the table, shoving my books into a pile. I doubted she would feel very comfortable there. She was in for a long semester, in this class at least. Perhaps, though, sitting beside her, I'd be able to flush out her thoughts' hiding place. Not that I'd ever needed close proximity before. Not that I would find anything worth listening to. Bella Swan walked into the flow of heated air that blew toward me from the vent. Her scent hit me like a battering ram, like an exploding grenade. There was no violent image enough to compass the force of what happened to me in that moment. Instantly, I was transformed. I was nothing close to the human I'd once been. No trace of the shreds of humanity I'd managed to cluck myself in over the years remained. I was a predator. She was my prey. There was nothing else in the whole world but that tree. I was a vampire, and she had the sweetest blood I'd smelled in more than 80 years. I hadn't imagined that such a scent could exist. If I'd known it did, I would have gone searching for it long ago. I would have scoured the planet for her. I could imagine the taste. The shock of the face I saw saved her life for a few thorny moments. She didn't make it easier. When she processed the expression on my face, blood flooded her cheeks again, turning her skin the most delicious color I'd ever seen. The scent was a thick haze in my brain. I could barely think through it. My instincts raged, resisting control, incoherent. I knew what had to happen now. The girl would have to come sit beside me, and I would have to kill her. Whoa. So Edward has a lot going on, and I cannot wait to finish his side of the story. I checked, and we have this on Overdrive, but there is a hold list, so you should definitely sign into your Libby account right now and put it on hold. I plan to order a couple more copies to make sure we can handle the demand. We do have it available in print here at the library, so definitely check out our curbside services and reserve your copy today. And until next time, keep reading.